Just remember what I've taught you.
What the fuck is that?
Hey, yo. Let's go while we're young.
All right, nobody saw that. Nobody saw me change it on the fly because it, for some reason, didn't do the thing it was supposed to do. But here we are now. All right. Hi, everybody. How you doing? How are things? You good? Everybody good? Everybody buckled and strapped and ready to go for tonight? Because, oh, man, tonight's going to be a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, creatives, cinematographers, dancers, bicyclists, flautists, anybody who's ever enjoyed the power of good mozzarella cheese, gluten enthusiasts, gamers, gamer girls, lewd thoughts, anybody who's ever had the other kind of lewd thoughts, painters, and most importantly, the comrades. It's so good to have you here. This is the Writer's Chat for December the 1st. Wow, it's the end of the year, you guys. December the 1st. And through no fault of my own, I continue to be John Adamus, the writer next door. And it is my absolute pleasure to be back here in your ears one more time. If this is the first time you're hearing me, hi, how are you? You look great today. If we've been here before, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. And if you have no idea what the hell it is you're listening to, this is the Writer's Chat, where for the next 2 hours, I will be answering questions gathered from all different corners of social media, as well as random people who sent me occasional emails, plus questions that come up in the chat. So, by the way, chat, Zoom, say hi to Twitch, say hi to Zoom, and everybody say hi to YouTube in the future. It's been a good week. It's been a week. It's been okay. It's been a little chaotic. There was a holiday to glorify white supremacy, colonialism, gentrification, genocide, destruction. And, you know, all the same, yeah, we're still here, still doing what we do. It's great. The food was good. The holiday's garbage. And I hope you're well. That said, I think we need to start, as we started last week, I think we need to start with a little bit of promotion, a little bit of pick-me-up, a little bit of something to give us some joy and hope in the world. So tonight, allow me for the creative spotlight. I still don't have good music. I guess, like, you know, hang on. Let me see what I got over here plugged into the board. How about we go with, maybe that's good enough? Tonight I want to talk about a podcast that I absolutely adore. Absolutely adore. And the two people who make this podcast are amazing. Actually, I think it's more than two, but it's the two hosts that I am immediately thinking of. I want to talk to you about All My Fantasy Children, a podcast that you can find wherever you find your podcast. But it's a podcast that, I don't know how to put this to you. Imagine just hanging out with people making stuff up. Just making stuff up, whether we're talking about different kinds of soft drinks made from corn, or we're talking about sentient leaves, or really angry wizards with barbecues, or anything in between, some kind of fish at some point. All My Fantasy Children develops a world and populates it with characters, stories, lore, legends, mysteries, myths, and other exciting pieces of creation. And it is hosted by my dear friend Jeff Stormer and his best friend in the whole wide world, Aaron Catano-Saez, whose voice you've heard if you've listened to the ad breaks for my own stuff. Because if you need a creative voice, you really should go talk to Aaron Catano-Saez. All My Fantasy Children is one of those podcasts that absolutely is a must listen. If you're ever wondering, like, hey, how can I be creative? How can I loosen up? How can I, have some laughs and occasionally mention Frasier, Dragon Ball Z, and weird, strange role-playing games, I recommend you check out All My Fantasy Children, and you can grab All My Fantasy Children at allmyfantasychildren.com. So, that said, having done the plug, I think we just really need to begin, don't we? I think tonight we're going to start. I don't know how to put this, but oh man, we're starting with spicy stuff? Like already? Really? All right. I guess we're starting spicy. Question number 1. John, what are the red flags to look for when it comes to a vanity press? All of them? Can I give that as an answer? Literally all of them? Vanity presses are these... If you don't know what a vanity press is, it's an incredibly predatory perversion of publication that looks to cash in on the idea that it's really, really important that an author be legitimized, big giant air quotes, through publishing, and their fly-by-night, get-rich-quick scheme to do so is devoid of merit, talent, skill, and help. Like, it's just there to give you the illusion of getting stuff done. And if you throw money at a vanity press, because here's the fun fact, you'll be paying this publisher to publish your book. I struggle to find a nice way to say this. I drove around today running errands, figuring out like how do I call somebody an idiot without really calling them an idiot? And the best way I can say it is like this. If you pay a vanity press to publish your book, you could have used that money to just self-publish it, and you'd get a better product, better results, you retain total control of it, and you'd probably be done faster. See, the major problem with a vanity press is that it violates a very central rule in publishing, which is money flows to the author. It flows to the author, not away from the author. The author doesn't pay a publisher to, do the things a publisher is supposed to do. Get a cover, get it edited, pay for printing, etc., etc., etc. Now, if you're about to go, but John, what about self-publishing? Well, in that case, the author is the publisher, and that rule doesn't entirely apply. But vanity presses look to straddle that line between self-pub and traditional pub, so that we are left with no choice but to sit there and go, well, you're straddling the fence, and therefore you are mooching parasitically from the system. So, yeah, all of the red flags, aside from, hey, you shouldn't be paying to get your book printed, and if you're going to, why not just self-publish it, go, fully commit to that, get your own cover, get your own editor, put your stuff out, you'll probably be done faster. But here's another thing you might not consider. Let's say you write a book and you use a vanity press to publish it. Nobody else is going to touch you. No other traditional publisher is going to pick you up for subsequent books the minute they find out your first book was printed through a vanity press. It's sort of like, if your first job, or let's not use a job metaphor. Let's use a different metaphor, John. Let's suppose the first meal of your day was built entirely out of excrement. Do you think anybody else would want to sit down and have a meal with you if they found out what you had for breakfast? That's exactly the sort of thing I want you to think about the next time you see the words vanity press advertised anywhere. Other issue, you'll probably sign away all the rights you'd probably don't want to sign away control to. Because what you're doing with a publisher, or an actual real publisher, if you're going to go the traditional route, is you are trading your idea for their money, and they help distribute your idea and control some, not all, of the rights so that everybody profits mutually. Allegedly. I'm giving a more idealized version of this. But all the same, a vanity press, most of them are predatory, so they'll just sign away your rights and sign away a number of projects. Like, you're not just paying for one, you're signing, for this one now, but also for the promise of 2 and 3 later. And getting those rights back, getting the distribution back, getting enough copies, getting all the stuff that a normal publishing contract would handle, vanity presses don't give a rat's ass about that. So please, 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 if you're really serious about doing this and really publishing some books, you can, for the same amount of money, if not cheaper, because I'm pretty sure it would be cheaper, publish your own work. Get a cover, get it edited. Probably cost you about the same amount of money. Actually, let's assume it's a $2,000 Vanity Press package. $1,000 for a cover would give you a baller as hell cover. So, yeah, you're going to save money in the long run if you just decided to actually commit to self-publishing rather than take the easy way out of a vanity press. So all red flags for vanity presses. No, thank you. Please, oh, please don't do it. I care about you too much to let you make a mistake like that. And that's how we're starting tonight. Wow. That's a hell of a start. Let's march on to question 2. John, when I'm writing a query letter, should I focus on plot and arcs more than world building and lore? What is with all the spicy questions up front? Did I miss something? Is today like World Spice Day? What? All right. Look, I have a hate-love relationship going on with this kind of question because I love it, first of all, because it's a question that comes up a lot. And it's a question that's, when asked, really devoid of nuance. People are just like, hey, this is what's up. And I respect anybody who's just going to stand there and ask the question. Good for you. Good job being courageous. Awesome. Here's why I don't like this question. Because it suggests on some level that there is some unifying field theory, some kind of super recipe. A little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and 2 of those, and 10% of this, and 15 of that, and 4 of those, and this little bit over there. And somehow, no matter what you're writing, if you just follow this one template, you will absolutely get a good, making big air quotes, good query letter. And it doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way. It's not going to start working that way. It just doesn't do that. That's just not a thing. But it's a valid question. And it's an important question once we get, sort of away from the idea that you're only supposed to be focusing on one thing and not the other. Because I'm going to spin this question and put it back to you. You know damn well that whenever you talk about your work, from to this person, to that person, to this person, to that person over there, from person to person, whomever they might be, you know goddamn well that depending on how you talk about it, to whatever degree you talk about whatever percent of whatever portion you're writing, the other person is either engaged or they're not. Oh, if I'm talking to my friend, I'm going to bring up this. If I'm talking to, somebody who doesn't really know what I'm doing, I'm going to talk about that. My random, weird, creepy coworker who's vaguely making conversation, I'm going to mention this. All these different possible audiences get a different approach from you when it comes to talking about the thing you're making. Sometimes you're going to talk about plot. Sometimes you're going to talk about the arc. Sometimes you're going to talk about characters. Sometimes you're going to talk about world building. Sometimes you're just going to say it has 10,000 words and be done with it or whatever. Every audience gets a different approach because the goal is the same despite the audience being different. The goal is to get another human being to go, oh, I'm interested in this. Please tell me more. That's all this is. So if rather than sit there and go, well, should I focus on this more than that? And turn it into this very mechanical, clinical, sterile, impersonal question, I want you to go back and think about, okay, this time I'm going to go talk to this other person who I don't know, who doesn't know how hard I've worked, who doesn't know what the hell I do. What would I say to get a complete stranger who doesn't normally give a shit about me? What would I say to engage them? That is the thing we talk about with the query letter. That's what's going on. So maybe, this one time for this one audience, you focus more on plot. Maybe that other time you focus on on arcs. Maybe the other time you talk about characters. It's all right. This is why I keep saying, write more than one query. Have more than one available. Take the time, sit down, hammer it out, come up with a couple different approaches. It really does make a big, giant difference. And stop looking for one-size-fits-all, absolutely perfect, magic bullet writing advice. Because it absolutely, positively does not exist. It's not going to start existing. It won't be existing later. It didn't exist before and we all forgot it. There is no one size fits all for this stuff. Great. Yes. Good. We're off to the races. What's our next question? Oh, good grief. We're just handing out spice left, right, and center. Question number 3. Do I always need to write a query letter when trying to get published? If you are talking about getting published traditionally, 99% of the time, you will need to write a query letter. I believe quite strongly that the days of in-person cattle call meat market pitching are done. If they're not done now, they are in some sort of weird unlife near-death state and will slowly be phased out given another bout of pandemic or given another radical shift in economics and social interaction. When in doubt, if you're going the traditional avenue for publishing, write a query letter. It really is that simple. Querying can be made complex, mostly because we bring so much baggage and panic and assumption to it. But fundamentally, as we talked about with the last question, you are just trying to organize some facts of your own choosing in such a way as to make another person who doesn't know the things you know interested. It can be practiced as easily as trying to explain to somebody what you had for dinner and make it sound appealing. It is exactly the same thing. Don't make that face at me. Just because it's a book as opposed to, the thing you made with chicken, you still got to make both sound appealing to others. Practice. And that is how we're starting. So let's... Ooh. Any questions? Anybody out there from Twitch, Zoom, YouTube in the future? You can leave your questions in the comments. I am reasonably certain it gets less spicy. Reasonably. Everybody good? Really? I'm just going to slow drink some tea then, I guess. If you're new, first of all, hello, hi, thanks for coming. Feel free to ask a question anytime. Just fire away anytime, doesn't matter. I will answer it. Really, truly, any question, doesn't matter. I should probably put that into the intro, shouldn't I? Yeah, I feel like I should put that in the intro. How am I and the cats? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'm well. For some reason, I've had some ongoing anxiety lately. I don't know why. I've just been kind of lately. I'm hoping working cathartically through answering some questions will abate some of it. But I'm okay. I guess my heart rate's a little up, but that might also be because I just had dinner and everything. The cats are thrilled because you know what came today? Our next cat food delivery. Oh, man. Such fine things as elk, goat, chicken, salmon. That weird sort of stew package that they always seem to throw into our stuff that I'm not entirely sure I want to know what's in it, but those cats think it's like the greatest meal made ever. So that arrived, and those cats were just, I should point out, my cats are whores for attention. They will, somebody comes to the door, somebody drops something off, they will rub up against the door as if to suggest hey, pay attention to me, come inside, and I will just sit on you for hours. And if they know you, they won't give a shit about you. They will look at you, maybe go near you, but if you don't engage with them immediately, they will just ignore you the same way they ignore some of my work equipment. They are attention whores, but they're fine. Thank you for asking. They are currently working on some new toys this evening, Well, really, it's some old toys, but I put new stitching in them, so it feels new. But they're good. I'm good. Life's pretty okay. Thank you so much for your question. I hope you're well. I hope you're good. I hope you're safe and warm and dry and happy and content. And okay. Yeah, things are good. Things are good. I'm sure at any time during this whole stream of questioning, the cats will come charging in here. Because, although it's kind of cold in here again, like it's warmer in the other room, so that's probably where they'll stay. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Other questions, issues, comments, concerns, challenges. I want to remind you that if you did not catch the Monday night stream, it's up. It's currently up now on YouTube, so feel free, dive in. You have a writing question. When would you want to lower conflict? Oh. Okay. You'd want to lower. Are we talking like overall in a story or specific to a scene? I'm going to answer both. You would want to lower conflict overall in a story when you're trying to make sure that the protagonist gets challenged. So rather than have the protagonist just constantly like bashing their head against a wall fighting, just one insurmountable thing after another, it would be to your advantage to kind of scale down all the conflict so that you can pick and choose moments when, the protagonist catches a break. And it would make the triumphs when they do happen feel much more substantial. Which means lowering some conflict while maybe not elevating others. You want to try not to constantly yo-yo both. Look to bring some down so the character develops a sense of competence, and then leave, if they're already pretty high, leave it be, because the contrast between the low to the high helps everybody feel like, oh my God, this character's kicking ass and I'm here for it. That said, in a scene, we have to get a little bit more crunchy. We have to get a little bit more technical. In part, this is going to have to deal with what kind of scene it is, because that's going to help inform what kind of conflict it is. So, for example, if we had dialogue, right? We're just having a back and forth between, let's say, two characters. I want to keep it real simple. If you're going to have more than characters, understand that you're just going to repeat parts of this process. But let's say you've got a back and forth between two characters. You would want to lower conflict when either there's nothing gained for either character in increasing or maintaining conflict. Like, we just go back and forth, and you and I, let's say it's you and I arguing. You and I go back and forth, and eventually we realize, like, we're not getting anywhere. So we disengage. We would want to lower conflict near the end of that scene because we've basically stalemated each other out. We've just sort of paralyzed, and we will spare everybody the agree to disagree nonsense and just instead go for, like we have to back off. We're just getting too hot about it. We're going to neutral corners and take 5 minutes. In dialogue, reducing conflict allows one character to disengage. The other benefit of doing it, particularly in dialogue, is that if you have access to inside one character's mind, let's say you've got your protagonist and a secondary character going back and forth at each other's throats, if you can get into the character's head and have them think through what they're thinking and feeling while the talking is happening, and the reader gets to benefit from the character's thinking and reacting and feeling while the talking is happening, you can reduce conflict because the character can make an assumption like, oh, I think I'm winning this fight. Awesome. Even if I'm in practice or in reality, air quotes, not. I can think that I am, which will cause me to lower conflict because I'm winning. Why I'm winning. Fuck it. It's great. But dialogue allows us to yo-yo that so that we can gain some kind of connection to character. If we're talking about this in terms of like an action beat, we would want to lower conflict because we're looking to subvert something. So everything goes like it's really simple, and then all of a sudden the big goon steps out from behind the boxes. Oh, we've all of a sudden gone from very low stakes to, oh my God, what are we going to do? So in an action scene, you're lowering conflict so that you can subvert something, challenge an idea, play with a trope, play with a cliche. I mean, obviously, yes, the other part of it, you can lower conflict because there's no need for it. So it's just sort of the scene is over. We're leaving this scene and going to the next one. We can lower conflict. If we're doing this for let's say, a discovery or an investigation beat where the characters are gaining new information that they didn't have originally. You're lowering conflict by accomplishing things. I got to find the file folder inside the office while we're burgling while we're burgling to figure out who the killer is in our political thriller. So we're searching our file folders with the flashlights in our mouths, and all of a sudden when we find the missing file folder, we've reduced the conflict because we've accomplished something. So in investigation or discovery beats, we've reduced conflict to provide a sense of accomplishment. All of a sudden, oh shit, we've gained something. +1, ding, and then we can move forward. Most of the time, regardless of the specific scene type you have, you are going to affect the amount of conflict up or down because you're trying to get the next thing you're going to feel important. We're raising conflict up because, oh my God, the goon just stepped out from the shadows. What are we going to do? Now we're definitely into a much higher stakes thing. Or we're reducing conflict because all of a sudden now we get to resolve stuff. What an excellent question. I hope I didn't get too technical. If I did, and you need me to break something down, holler. What a fantastic question. The follow-up to that is, how often do you want to do? Like, how often do you want to lower conflict? And that's really variable. I would not try and go out of your way to think too hard about it. That's not a you personally thing. That's more of just like any writer thing. Don't look for those opportunities to lower conflict, because when you screw this up, I'm not saying you specifically again, but when this gets messed up, the story can grind to a halt because you lower it too much. It's sort of like when you take a volume knob and you drag it down to 0 too quickly. You've got to kind of ratchet it back up and figure out where you want it to be. So yes, there are times and places to do it, absolutely, but don't come to rely on it like a primary tool in the toolbox. It is a secondary tool in the toolbox, if that makes sense. What an awesome question. Fuck yes, love that question. Here, have air horns. As soon as I go back to the air horns page. Air horns, amazing. Love that question. Other questions? All right, on we go. Back to what we're doing. Question number 4. What does a publisher do when reading a submission? I talked a little bit about this on Monday. So what I'm going to do is, hi, it's good to see you. I hope you're well. Thanks for being here. You're a delight. You look great today. I'm going to go answer this question. So what does a publisher do when reading a submission? I talked a little bit about this on Monday. So I'm gonna direct you there if you want to go in more detail. But for now, I'm gonna give you sort of like you do, but you can loll at it all you want. You really do look great. So longer answer was over on Monday. Short version coming now. What the publisher is gonna do, we're gonna handle this in 2 ways. One, if you're gonna traditionally publish, and one if we're gonna traditionally publish, but we're going to send a sample, versus traditionally publish and sending a whole thing all at once. That's the easiest way to handle this. If you're self-publishing it, presumably you've read your own submission, so that sort of handles that side of the equation. But for now, let's start with the partial submission crowd. Here's what happens. Your partial submission, along with your query letter, along with whatever other documents they want you to send, have been sent to an email address where they have at some point been received by an email address and probably put into a spreadsheet of some kind. Maybe that's a Google Doc, maybe that's an Excel spreadsheet, who knows. It's some kind of spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet's going to have some very important columns that you need to know about, because you're going to need to put information into this stuff. It's going to have your name, whether that's a pen name or an authorial name. It's going to have some kind of name. And it's going to have some kind of material, data, used to, connect with you, to correspond with you for whatever reason, whether that's to send a rejection letter or send a contract or just go back and forth and talk or whatever. So that's going to be things like a mailing address, an email, possibly a phone number. At the very least, you're going to get an email address. The others are variable depending on what publisher we're talking about. After that, we're going to get the title of the book, because shockingly, you need that. You're going to get title of the book, you're going to get the word count, and you're going to get a rough 1 to 3 sentences about what, saying what the book is or what the book's about. If your publisher handles multiple genre, because some do, there will also be a column on the spreadsheet to determine its genre. So, for example, you might get on a spreadsheet Jane Doe, address, phone number, email address, book title, Cardboard Love, 88,000 words, romance novel. It's the story of 2 workers who fall in love during a workers' revolution at a river-named megacorporation. Boom, done. The next couple columns on that spreadsheet are going to deal with, is it a yes, is it a no, is it a maybe? And then every person who has access to submissions votes per submission. A yes it's going to go forward in the publishing process. A no is, well, it's a no, you're going to get rejected. And a maybe is usually what we have meetings about. It depends. If it's a number of maybes and a number of no's, you talk it out. Yes, the River Mega Corporation is best known for being a polluter and a ruiner of forests and everything. Isn't that shocking? Anyway, everybody votes in a maybe. You never want to be a maybe because it irritates people. It irritates the people who have to have meetings about it, and it's a strange limbo space for writers because you're not getting a clear answer either way. You're just sort of in a holding pattern, and for a lot of people that can be really anxiety-provoking. Your yeses will get read. Now, if it's a sample submission or a partial submission, it's going to be read in whatever size fragment it is. If you just sent like 5 pages in, they will be read in their entirety. If you sent 10 pages in, the first 5 will get read, and the reader or readers will make a decision as to whether or not they want to read the next 5. Go, 1 to 5, and then 6 to 10. If you sent 25, it's the same breakdown: 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 25. Same with 50, you're just going to go from 25 to 50. All this time, all these steps, all these little milestones along the way, once the reader is checking for whether or not they're still engaged, whether they still want more information, they still want to keep reading. 2, if over the course of the story as they're going, are they learning more things, or is the author repeating themselves, or is nothing really happening? They're looking for red flags versus green lights. Red flags being the things that stop us from reading and problems with the writing. Green lights that allow us to move forward. You want to chain together way more green lights than you have red flags. You are super hyper rarely ever going to have 0 or 1 red flag. If by the way, if you do, it's going to be a big ass red flag. But by and large, you're just trying to have more positives than negatives in this process. That's if you're doing a sample submission. And ultimately, with a sample submission that becomes a yes, a request is going to be made for the author to send the publisher more pages so they can continue making this determination. If this is, however, a full submission, it still gets read in those stages: 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 25, 35, 50, 75, 100, 200, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Except the full document is already there. You are more likely to get a much more immediate answer if it's a no that way, because I have the whole thing in front of me. And if I'm disengaged in the earliest first 5 pages, well, then I'm not going to find out your great big twist 200 pages later because you lost me on page 6. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm not saying this to drive you out or push you away. I'm telling you that this is what happens. This isn't reading time with the friend zones. We are not having story time with one another. We're here to make a product that we can all mutually benefit from. Publisher's going to sell this book. You're going to get money from this book. They're going to make money from this book. Yay, capitalism. So they're looking for the most complete thing that has the most successes tied to it and with it. And the red flags, the decision gets made, well, do we just tell the writer? Do we provide notes? Hey, here are the problems. Do we just say no because either the red flags are too numerous, or, as is frequently the case, the person dealing with the no's or even some of the yeses doesn't have familiarity or education or ability to parse into language for you how to make the no into a yes. They can tell you they don't like stuff, but if you were to go, hey, how do I fix this so that you like it? They're going to make a face like, stuff? So whatever face you just pictured me saying that with, imagine that face on the other end. Like that's what happens. Publishers want to say yes, but there is a line. There is a threshold for quality, a threshold for completeness, a threshold for, is this going to be sellable to other humans, that needs to be reached. It's not enough if the story is just nice, or if your stuff is cute, or if it's charming in some kind of weird Hallmark movie sort of way. Your publisher's goal, as said in chat, your publisher wants to make money. That's their job. That's their business. They're in this for the money. Your book is the means to that money. If your book cannot be turned into a thing that will produce them money, they don't want it. One more note here on this question. Depending on the size of your publisher, you're dealing with a publishing submission load of somewhere between 24 to 1,000. And the number of people making the determinations and the reading and the notes and the rejections and all that, rejections are on Mondays and Thursdays, by the way, making all those determinations, it's probably less than 10 total number of people, depending on your department, your genre, your imprint, the budget of these companies, etc. So that's why there's a backlog. There's just not enough humans doing this task. And when they do it, they are not paid well because capitalism. And when they do it, they are misinformed and poorly able to facilitate better success, in part because capitalism, in part because white supremacy, in part because patriarchy, in part because ableism. Take your choice. But the fact remains, the publisher is there to look at your book and evaluate it, not in terms of like, oh my God, you worked so hard on this. They don't give a shit. They're looking at this in terms of, yeah, I can sell this to somebody else. But they read. And maybe they make some notes. And maybe if you're lucky, they pass those notes to you. And maybe those notes make sense to you once they are passed. And you go from there. That's what a publisher does. On to the next. What makes epic fantasy epic? Two things. One, the scope and scale of the story is huge. The stakes of the story are huge. This isn't just going to be, two people in a house dealing with one kind of problem, just limited to them, when we know other people exist in the area. This isn't an intrapersonal story. This is a story where the stakes and the scale of everything are huge. We know there's a kingdom. We know there's countryside. We know there's continents. We know there's a planet. We know there's a galaxy. We know exactly how big the bigness of things is. And likewise, the problem, the conflict of the story takes up that space. This isn't just going to be a real bad day for Kevin. This is going to be a real bad day for all of existence. We want epic to feel big, where it seems like nothing is really excluded. Nothing seems to be really safe. And when I say that, I mean like if the bad thing happens, all bets are off. Like it's the most superlative. It's the biggest amount of danger, the biggest amount of consequence, the biggest idea bogglingly possible. That's one. Two, You have broken the 105,000 word barrier. That's it. Those are the two major criteria. You've got over 105,000 words, and the story is giant. If the story feels big in terms of what's happening, who it's happening to, how big a deal that it's happening, etc., etc. There are some other considerations, but they're secondary. They are worth talking about, though. First and foremost, one, or I guess A, because we're subdividing. We want to make sure we have an ensemble cast. That does not mean automatically we have multiple points of view. It just means we have more than 3 total characters in the story. Good guy, sidekick, antagonist. We have others. Multiple secondary characters. If you want to go multiple points of view, you have different point of view protagonists. However, when you do that, when you jump, from not just having one point of view character, but to multiple point of view characters, the distinctions are clear. The characters feel different. The story feels focused differently. It's not just it's not just a different view of the same events in the same room, but we are looking at radically different parts of the whole, as if the story is so big we can position, a handful of people in totally different places and get a composite view of the story once all is done. Just in general, for epic fantasy, or really epic anything, epic science fiction, epic romance, epic western, epic thriller, epic horror, epic whatever, one of the other key subordinate points is no matter how many point of view characters you have, you are nailing the hell out of the point of view. So if you only have one, whether it's first person or third person, you are rock solid in it. You are not making little detours over here to have other stuff happen. You are not wobbly in the point of view and suddenly ascribing emotions and feelings to other characters that we couldn't possibly understand or fathom. We're not suddenly cutting away to the antagonist or any of that amateurish nonsense. We are locked into the one point of view. And if it's multiple point of views, each point of view, when it's their turn, the other ones are sort of off in fuzzy limbo space. But you've nailed your point of view. C, second thing, third thing. Your story is always in progress. We are not waiting for the story to poke a character and go, hey, remember, you're part of this. The story's already in motion, and the characters express agency across that story. They're doing stuff. They have reasons for doing stuff of their own volition. Sometimes, they're reacting to other people. Sometimes they're reacting to situations, but by and large, characters are driving their own story. They're making their own decisions. They're taking their own actions. Do those things over 105,000 words against a big backdrop, and you will have epic fantasy or epic science fiction or epic insert genre. That's what makes epic, fill in the blank genre, epic. It does not, contrary to opinion on the hashtag writing community, it does not have diddly squat to do with the age of the story. Because you can have epic fantasy come out within the last 6 months. I hope I answered that question. On to question 6. We are flying tonight. Oh my God, it's gentle advice. Gentle advice. If a publisher can do whatever they want with my book, why do I need to write a business paragraph in my query? Okay. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I'm gonna visualize peace and calm and butts and warm summer days because I'm going to my happy place. Because this question fills me with a rage hotter than the sun. Because this idea that a publisher is just going to show up and change your book seems to be pervasive amongst authors who grossly misunderstand what it is they're supposed to be doing when it comes to a relationship with a publisher. Publishers, as we talked about a few questions earlier, just want to make money. Publishers hate spending money. And if they have to get in there and do whatever the hell they want with your book, i.e. rewrite it, or worse, farm it out to an outside editor who can handle the workload while their in-house editors do other things, they don't like that. I know this because I am frequently an outside editor called upon by publishers who has to, then deal with them complaining every inch of the way when I'm trying to do what they're hiring me to do. And I'm saying all this in my happy place because I don't want you thinking publishers are out there lurking behind every corner, just ready to take your book from you and, I'm making big air quotes, ruin it. Because that's not what they're trying to do. Remember, the publisher is looking to sell your book. And when you sign that piece of paper that gives them that book and they have given you some money in exchange, it's their book. And they can do as they like with it. However, that doesn't mean they're going to do whatever they want with it. It's not standard operating procedure to always change the name or always make some kind of big substantial change to the material of the story. Yeah, you're going to get edited. Somebody's going to come in there and put in commas and take out commas and throw in an M dash and probably a semicolon or something. Somebody's going to hit and enter, hit a space on a hard carriage return or something. They're going to probably put it in a different font and adjust the margins. Somebody's going to do something to your manuscript. And yeah, it's possible that there will be discussions about pulling out a secondary character or cutting a subplot or tailoring an ending or rebuilding the story in some way. And maybe sometimes you'll be involved in those discussions and maybe sometimes you won't be. And if that's too much of a shock to you, if that's a pearl clutching moment, oh my God, what are we going to do? They're going to take my story. Well, then go publish it yourself. It's worth it. If it's so important to you that the story remain untouched and go up as is, you can do that. You can publish it yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are going the traditional route, you have to understand there's always that possibility that somebody's going to come in and go, in order for me to sell this idea, I got to change this. I got to tweak this. I got to fix whatever. And it's to your advantage to not dither about, well, I'm okay if you add margins. I'm not okay. Either yes or no. You've got to understand the relationship you're getting into here. But the reason you write the business paragraph in your query is because at the time you're writing that query, you're not in this relationship. So your book needs a title. And you need to make your story into a sellable product. So you need those things because those things help make your book sellable. It's not just a hoop to jump through for the sake of having a hoop. There are plenty of those in this industry. There's plenty of those in this writing process. Like Goodreads. Big ass giant stupid hoop. But by and large, you put it in the query so that one, you appear like you know what you're doing. And two, so that when you do submit things, there's something for the spreadsheet we talked about with the previous question, and your book needs a title. And it needs to be describable. And you need to be able to talk about your book as though it is a finished, sellable thing and not just the, oh my God, I'm writing the story where it's so creative, I'm so genius. You need to be able to make that turn from just, I'm somebody who made up a story to, I'm somebody looking to sell a thing. That's why you write the business paragraph. That's why the publisher wants to say yes to your book. Because your query letter is that synthesis of, you've made this idea sound interesting, and you're able to talk about it in a way that isn't just you telling me how great it was that you only wrote 6 drafts. Lol. It's part of the business. It's part of what you have to do. That's why we do it. Are there better ways to do it? Sure. Is traditional publishing going to suddenly do them? No. Have you seen who's in charge of traditional publishing? They are not interested in expedient change. So for now, this is what we have to do. We use the tools of our enemy against them until we are able to wield our own tools, comrades. Great question. Other questions? Zoom, I see you. Over there, just sitting. Twitch. Hey, you guys good? Quiet. It's all right. It's all right. Are there any tropes that just make me angry? Like, me personally? Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, here we go. That make me personally, yeah. Okay. I have a real burning dislike for the, I don't even know what the name of it, I don't think there's a specific name for it, but it's the harmless, ordinary waif meeting the super character. I'm just a regular person and you're a hyper rich, immortal thingamajig. Can't stand it. Can't stand it. It's impossible to relate to. Likewise, vigilante driven by a moral code that never gets explained and that seems to have no overt consequences. Also aggravating. It's why I soured on Batman. Because his superpower is that he's a rich white man. And I understand that's a tremendous superpower, but all the same, it seems that there are very few consequences for Batman. Whereas when you look at somebody like Daredevil, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, Superman, for Christ's sake, there are consequences for their moral code. And it's a well-explained moral code that is beyond just the black and white binary of, I have dead parents, therefore I fight crime. I am a traumatized psychopath, so therefore I traumatize other psychopaths. Those are the tropes that make me just like flat out eye roll. What are you fucking kidding me? Angry. Everything else, I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, it's not my favorite, but it's there. But if you really want to just like jab me with buttons and really just like inflame me, Johnny Storm style, yeah, write a completely unrelatable character and then stick them with a perfect being, neither of whom can be related to by an average reader, and or take a character of immense privilege, fail to challenge that privilege, and then eliminate consequences for them. I will throw manuscripts across rooms. Great question. Thank you for asking. For beta readers, I have a few that are friends. Oh, meaning you are friends with your beta readers, or that your beta readers are friends with your other beta readers? Is it a good idea to find a few outside the circle for a different perspective? Yes. Go find people who are not friends. Yeah, you can use your friends. Yes, you're friends with them. Okay. It's totally cool to use your friend, not use your friends. That sounds exploitative. It's totally okay if you're friends with your beta readers. It's not the end of the world. However, since we are interested in building a better product, the book, as opposed to building an echo chamber where our friends will only tell us the things we want because they don't want to hurt our feelings, we want to make sure we extend our beta readers past our friend circle. What I usually tell people is that you want your beta readers built sort of around 4 points. Somebody who's going to absolutely love what you do. Somebody who's going to absolutely despise what you do. Somebody who is fairly indifferent and could go either way, and then somebody who doesn't know. So that way we're covering all 4 quadrants of the Venn diagram. It's okay to be friends with your beta readers, but be careful that your friendship doesn't color the beta reading experience. I think that's the easiest way to say it. Because, well, yeah, I don't want to, like, they're my friend. I don't want to, like, totally dunk on them for chapter 10. But if chapter 10 needs dunking, if chapter 10 needs to be, rejected and thrown back and go make a new chapter 10, your beta reader needs to be able to say that to you without concern. These friends would. Well, then, yeah, great. I guess the obverse side of this is friends who intentionally look to, like, smote you. What the fuck is this? That's a thing. But yes, extend past your friend circle and get outside perspectives. It's super helpful. And it'll possibly make you more friends, which the world can always use more of. So, yes, go outside that circle for one or two people just to bring them in. Diversity is a good idea here. Good question. Great question. You're welcome. Any others? I can tell you the next question involves me counting on my fingers. And it's going to go over real well in audio. Other questions? Now we're about halfway, so I'm going to make this statement just so we're clear. Yes, I'm really serious when I tell you that I believe in you. It isn't just lip service. Somebody left me a note on Monday stream that if it was just like, do I just say that because I just say that? No, I'm serious. I believe in you. I believe in your ability to make art. I believe in your ability to push yourself forward and get better at this thing you're doing. It might be an uncomfortable process, but I believe in your ability to improve. And I will do everything in my power to facilitate that and make that a little bit easier, or at least clarify it for you or make it less mysterious. But yeah, I believe in you. I'm going to believe in you even if you can't stand me. It doesn't go away. I'm weirdly romantic, that capital R romantic that way. Yep, still serious. All right. Other questions? All right, back we go. From 6 to 7. Come on, 7, show up. Nope, that's 8. Nope, that's 7. Sorry. 7. If I want my book on shelves for Christmas, when should I be sending it out? In this case, they mean sending it out for submission. Like, you finish the thing, when do I send it off? Okay. It's easier to work backwards. By the way, if you're trying to get your book out for Christmas now, you better be self-publishing it. But yeah, all right, so here's how we're going to work backwards. So in order for a book to get on a shelf, like a physical shelf, in order for a book to get on a physical shelf for Christmas, it needs to arrive in a store by the 15th of that month. So if it needs to be in the store at the 15th of the month, it needs to be out on the road 30 to 45 days prior to that. So that's December 1, 15. So we need to be in November 15. It needs to be shipped November 15th. So if we're in November now, in order for it to be shipped then, it would need to be printed, and it would need to be mass printed and shipped. So that's going to be 3 months, 90 days. So let's go backwards from October, 3 months. September, August, July. Okay? So in order for it to go out into the world in July, it needs to have a cover, it needs to be blurbed, and it needs to have a back blurb put to it, and it needs to have some kind of marketing set underneath. So that's going to take, let's say, 2 months. So that's June, May. So now we're in May, aiming for Christmas. See how I got there? I just walked backwards. So now we're in May. And we've got a book that needs to be edited and covered and all that stuff. So we're working backwards still. It's going to be 60 days for that, right? To get an artist together, to get all that shit lined up. So backwards from May, 2 months. April, March. So now we're in March. So if we're in March and the book is getting edited and finalized so we can go forward, we need to submit it prior to that. So what's prior to March? February. Valentine's Day, middle of the month. If you want your book on a shelf for Christmas, it needs to be out in the world and said yes to by February 14th or 15th, really. So that means prior to February, it should probably be circulating out on query, right? So that would be January. December. Now, I expanded the timeline here because you can take the same timeline and shorten it down to 8 months if you need to, at which case you'd want to have it done by April. But a few factors here to modify this. One, there is a global paper and cardboard shortage, so it's going to make physical printing of a book more expensive, which is going to encourage publishers to print fewer copies. Two, if you are a first-time author, you are not getting the lion's share of a publisher's attention unless they believe that book is incredibly marketable. This can give you what's the word I want to use? The misfortune of being somewhat relegated and slowed down on a timeline. You'll get not necessarily bumped, but you'll get deprioritized. You'll be the third of 7 releases as opposed to like the big one they're counting on. It happens. It's a thing. But generally, if you want your book so that grandma can buy it at the bookstore for Christmas, you're going to need at least 8 months. As you kind of advance through the traditional publishing world and you rack up some success and you rack up some bestseller status and you become a name, this window really shortens. The shortest this window can be is 90 days. We don't really do it that way anymore because it puts enormous strain on all the links in the chain between writer wrote something and bookstore shelves something. But the shortest it can be about 90, 95 days. Understand, though, that there's a global shipping crisis happening right now. There are tens of thousands of just giant boats full of stuff that are just slowly arriving places. And then with another outburst of pandemic-related things, lockdowns are possible, as are shipping delays, as are all different kinds of things. So if you are thinking about, I got to have a physical book because grandma needs that physical book, consider not doing that. Just think about a print-on-demand service if you're desperate to give her a book to hold in her 2 little hands. But you got to be able, from a writer's standpoint, to count months because it's not a straight line in traditional publishing. It's a real twisty-turvy, crazy straw kind of experience. It takes so long here. It's a lot of hurry up and wait, which we will talk about in like 5 questions from now. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. I can, for instance, knock out a book in a week, but it might be 5 weeks for the cover artist to design the cover. And then it might be a week to get, a blurb from somebody, but then it might be 10 weeks for printing. You might have planned for 6. It ends up being 10. This is just how it happens. This is one of the most frustrating parts of the publishing side. Schedules need to be rigid, but at the same time, flexible. We need things to happen at a certain time if we want certain results, but at the same time, so much of that's out of our control. Make sense? Any questions on the counting? Yes, I counted on my fingers to make sure I didn't miss any months. I'm 99% certain I didn't miss any months. If I did, please let me know. YouTube, I'm sure you'll let me know. You guys are always so good about that kind of thing, especially those bots that leave me very encouraging messages like, this is great. Now here, click these weird spammy links. I do love those things, by the way. Shall we move on? Let's. Question 8. What's one thing not enough people talk about when it comes to needing an editor? I think the easiest answer here is that the admission that they need one. I know an awful lot of people who just like, I don't need one. I don't need an editor. I went to school. I'm smart. And yeah, that's great. I'm glad you went to school. I went to school too. And yeah, you still need an editor. I think past that simple answer, though, I think one of the things people misunderstand about the benefit of an editor is that they're a beta reader before you're at beta readers. Because while an editor's job is to sit there and get the manuscript working in a technical sense, making sure your character is developed, making sure your world building is great, fixing your grammar, making sure your paragraphs are paragraphs, all that stuff. They're not thinking about it in terms of just this sort of detached, clinical, what's the best thing to make the sentence work as a sentence. They're looking at this in terms of like, well, somebody's going to read this thing. It's got to make sense to them. And if they've read up to this point, are they going to have this question about who the hell are you talking about on this page? Where does this person put their hands? The editor is asking those questions a reader is going to possibly ask. The editor's doing it first. They're a beta reader, if that makes sense. They're, editorially, these questions are important because they reveal the sort of the thinking of the author. What are you trying to say? How are you organizing these things this way? What are you getting at? So how can we get you there faster or easier? And that's not just a mechanical sense. That's somebody's going to read this thing sense. I don't think enough people talk about that when it comes to, I think if they did, people would value editing more. Because I think what people see it as now is a combination of just a bizarre, grotesque expense and a really impersonal, sterile effort. Just break out the red pen like elementary school or education in any way and just, slash and ruin things. Like it's a real like talked about it on Monday, a real adversarial relationship. But I think if more writers considered your editor as sort of the first view a reader would take, albeit a reader who's smart in terms of like grammar and structure, because readers are just going to try to read the story and understand it, but the editor's doing that while also making sure the thing looks good. I think that would change the perspective on needing an editor. I wish more people would talk about it because I do believe it would lead to people saying nicer things about editors, because social media is just packed with delightful people expressing a great number of thoughts about editing and editors and what we do and why it's so expensive and then why that's really a bummer, without really challenging the idea that the problem isn't my expense. It's the fact that your capitalism isn't giving you enough money. But that seems to be a fight for a different day, comrade. All right. Good question. Good question. Shall we march on? Question 9. Should I include trigger and content warnings in my query letter? Yes. Just stick them right at the top, italicize them. If you're not exactly sure, what the things are that are potentially triggering, like you want to make sure you're phrasing it correctly, phrase it incorrectly. If you're unsure of the technical jargon as to the nature of a trigger warning, just write out what it is. If you don't understand what encompasses graphic imagery, let's say, well, then detail it. Implied threats of gun violence. If you weren't sure what that encompassed, you'd say something like, there are 2 scenes where somebody waves a gun in the other person's face. It's okay that you don't know the sort of textbook instructive definitions of things. It's more important that you're able to point out like, hey, this stuff in the story could be a problem for somebody and I'm bringing it to your attention, so that we can figure out a way to make people aware without, causing upset. It takes no time at all. And arguably, it has been my experience so far that it does not interfere with the word count of the query letter. It's just sort of there at the top. and then you get your 250 or so words to say what you got to say. I have not encountered a person who has decided to count those words against the 250 word count. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but off the top of my head, I don't know them. But yeah, you should totally include those triggering content warnings. It makes life easier for everyone. And compassion is always an appealing trait in somebody you're trying to have some kind of business or personal or professional relationship with. Yay, compassion. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. Other questions? If we're done in the next 10 minutes, which is conceivable, I do want to at least try and get to the 90-minute mark. So if we need to fill for time, I'm sure I could find something to talk about, but just heads up, if we're ever done early, I'm going to always aim between 90 and 2 hours. That's mostly a me thing. That's not a reflection of you. That's mostly I'd like to have a file this certain size, and I'd like to have a file on YouTube this certain size just for metrics and the algorithm. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream, Troy. That's important to me. Why are you apologizing for asking questions? It's literally a Q&A. Another beta reader questions. Do you have a recommended place to ask for readers? Do you mean where can I find beta readers? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I have a recommended place. Social media, but not the #writing community. Because that hashtag is not interested in encouraging you to write. I would just tweet or post on Meta, Facebook. What are they going by now? Put up an Instagram post. Use some kind of social media. If you need to increase your outreach from that, tell me you've done it and then give me a link to the social media you've used, and I will help push it. There's always yes, you can always use my Discord for beta readers. There's always somebody somewhere who would be happy to. I can't promise you there's legions of people. But yeah, you can always jump on the Discord, which is accessible through the Patreon. That's patreon.com/John helps you create. But yeah, if you jump on the Discord, I should probably just put in a beta reader channel. That way you can just ask. That's not a bad idea. Let's put that on the to-do list for post this chat. So by the time this chat hits YouTube, is it possible? Would you bear with me 2 minutes while I did that now? Let's just do that, and then I will come right back. So for the moment, I don't have any intermission music that's suitably long enough because this stupid thing is loading now. Oh, come on. Come on, there we go. All right, we're going to just stick this. And where are we going to put this? We're going to put this in here. Let's call this Beta Readers Wanted. Boom. Now there's a new channel on the Discord entirely for beta readers. Delightful. So yes, if you're looking for beta readers, Discord, accessible through the Patreon. And yes, as Troy points out, another great way to get beta readers is to offer to beta read for others. This does create sort of a commitment on your part, but reciprocity is what drives mutual aid. So if you demonstrate that you are willing to go first, we've talked about the benefit of going first before. If you demonstrate that you're willing to do it, someone else will come along and eat those red berries. And it creates a nice cycle of back and forth so that you're not known as someone who's just always looking to exploit a pool of people. Yay, compassion. But by and large, you ask your social media network. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I talk about beta readers, giving them a structure, giving them a Google form or something, let's say. You want to, if they're not a pro. If this is their first beta reading experience, you want to give them that sort of questionnaire or that kind of template to kind of steer them through the process so that because one of the things you want to do with a new beta reader is get them away from the idea that they could do it wrong or that they're going to mess you up or that they're not going to be helpful or waste your time. You want to get away from all that because they won't unless they sit there and like don't do anything. You want to give them everything you can possibly do to empower them and encourage them because any help is good help for this. So the question is then, how much should a beta reader be paid? Yes. It's an hourly position or do it by the project. It depends on you and your budget. Frankly, it's, I don't think it's unreasonable to either flat rate it out at $100 or $9 or $10 an hour. That's not unreasonable. It's not a great living wage, but in terms of a project, not necessarily bad. But yes, or if financial means are not necessary or not possible, trade is always great. I've traded editing and for beta reading, and I've traded sound design service for beta reading. It happens. So if you can't make money work because capitalism, trade is an option. Just make sure it's equitable trade that benefits both parties, ideally more the other one than you. Yes, and you can always find people with your real life support group, but yeah, you do. I mean, we only have so many friends. I don't mean to make that sound bad, but like if we only know 6 people, eventually we will need a 7th. But start with the people you know and work outward towards people you don't. And providing that structure will help incorporate sort of a homogeneity? A uniformity. Let's go with that word, John. A uniformity in their answers. So that whether they've done this before a million times or this is time number 1 for them, you have some kind of expectation or foreknowledge of what you're going to get. But yeah, beta readers. I should also point out that it is theoretically possible to only need 1 or 2, trust them, and move forward. There is no magic number of beta readers, and there is no requirement for beta readers. You must have 4 people to ride this ride. Fiverr does. I don't remember who they were. It's been so long since I looked at Fiverr for beta reading. But the last time I looked, which I think might have been like pre-pandemic, yes, you can get beta readers on Fiverr. You can also get them on Reddit if you're willing to navigate that hellscape. Social media, though, by and large, for me, has always been productive, as well as asking other authors, hey, do you know any beta readers who have like a weekend free? I mean, don't ask authors you don't know. Ask the people you do know who you do have relationships with and see who you can reach through the ether, I guess would be a good way to say. Reddit's great if you're looking for butts. It's fantastic for butts or really obscure like drivers and how-to guides for stuff. Like if you've ever broken your water softener, Reddit is a great place to figure out how to like patch it yourself together until you can afford a plumber. Or, hey, look, there's a naked person. That's awesome. But beyond that, Reddit is frequently just a toxic dump for the worst things that I thought we all sort of moved past 20 years ago. Hellscape. Yeah. Shall we move on? See what's next. Question 10. Pick one dead genre and resurrect it. It occurred to me like 10 minutes before I started that you might not know the term dead genre because it's an actual publishing term. It refers to a genre where sales have dropped either to 0 or single digits to the point where there are no further publications made in the genre for a period of, I think, a dozen years. It's either 12 or 15 years. It's at least a decade. That's what qualifies a dead genre. There used to be a Wikipedia page about them. I don't know if there still is. It might have been absorbed into just genres. But picking a dead genre and resurrecting it, I know exactly what I would do. And I know exactly why it died. So that really helps. I would bring back slice of life humorist as a genre. And slice of life humor is the stuff that got replaced by social media. Blogging, microblogging, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, now TikTok, Snapchat, all that stuff. That absorbed the slice of life genre where somebody could just sit and cross that boundary between memoir and humor to reflect on their life in a way that made it relatable to other people. This is the space that like Dave Barry, Irma Bombeck sat in for ages and ages and ages. And it later got subdivided into like slice of life trivia, where you get all those weird trivia books, or slice of life jokes, where you got like just straight up joke books. Resurrecting it though, without stepping on the toes that social media, and in particular video, because video is really the thing that killed it, without stepping too far onto the video toes or the cinematographic toes, I think I would resurrect it by using two tools from two totally different other genres. I'd go steal something from tabletop role-playing games, and I would steal something from sort of somewhat academic fiction, because I would create slice of life humor while also being very meta about slice of life humor. So I would lay out my slice of life humor, be it blog posts or a combination of coffee table book and photos and pictures and captions and text. But then I would also generate marginalia that itself was commentary on the thing I'm being slice of life about, but the marginalia itself would also be slice of life, as though you were reading my notes from today about the stuff I wrote 6 months ago, even though I'd be playing in that sort of chronological, that sort of temporal space where I might have written both the article and the meta marginalia in the same weekend. But I'm creating this juxtaposed time, this detachment for you, the reader's benefit, to be able to laugh at not only the funny stuff I said, but the funny stuff I said about the funny stuff I said. That's how I'd resurrect it. Do I think it would work? Maybe once. It's real niche. It'd be real niche. And it would take a hell of a strong marketing campaign. You'd probably need a body of work to do it with. You couldn't just roll out with like 5 things. You'd probably want to do this with like 30 to 50 and really construct either something serialized or just a big ass volume. And then have a pre-built-in audience so that it wasn't too tough a sell if I was going to go traditional, but I think in terms of individuated self-publishing, you'd probably find more success. So I'd also build an audience that way. So whether that's a newsletter or whether that's just a documented blog post and then a blog post broken down and then deconstructed, yeah, that's how I would resurrect a dead genre. I encourage, if you ever, like, here's how you can do this. This isn't just John flexing, I went to school, I'm a dork. Here's how you can do this. Think about a book you read at least 10 years ago. Think about a book you liked as a kid. Think about a book you vaguely remember from school, or think about a book you were reading at some other point in your life. You don't necessarily have to go back and read that book again. You can if you want. But try and think about how that book made you feel, whatever it is, whatever book it is. And try to figure out if the way you feel about it is because it's romanticized from the past. Like, oh my God, I read this book when I was 15 and it changed my life. How? Why? If you were to go back to it now, are you saying you like it because it changed your life and your life took off at 15? Or are you saying that if you were to look at it now, your life might not be changed a second time? Oh my God, thank you for subscribing. You're the best. You rock. Thank you. Your subscription means greatly to me. Thanks, man. Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. back to the genre. Think about how a book affected you. Think about how something moved you. And see if you can verbalize your understanding of that movement now. I can talk about the stuff I read when I was 15 that blew my mind. But I'm able now at 43 to talk about how it affected me. Because at 15 it was just like, oh, this is so cool. Oh, totally sick, bro. Whereas, well, it wouldn't be totally sick. It'd be rad. Totally rad, bro. But now at 43, I'm able to go, well, it really spoke to me because nothing else I was consuming was coming at me in that direction. That difference and that facility to verbalize how things made a difference allow you to take that idea and put it in current stuff you're working on. Because now you know what to aim for. I'm aiming for fiction that speaks in a way that nothing else is going to speak. And then you will be somebody else's 15-year-old catalyst. And that's all because we sit and look backwards at what we work on and what we're doing to that end. Make sense? It's a great question. Question 11. John, if I'm writing an A-B romance, if you're not sure what an A-B romance is, that's where you have your two protagonists, your A and your B, whether that's your man, woman in your hetero romance or you're just your two people, right? Your two characters, character one in love and character two in love. And you're alternating between the two, either every chapter or every other chapter or at a certain pattern or tempo. Can I use a different tense for each POV, meaning character A is in one tense and character B is in another tense? Yes, but. And the but's kind of deliberate here because you are totally and absolutely free to do so. However, if you do so, please make sure you do your absolute bestest to really have a reason for it within the construct and context of your story. So that it's not just this thing you're trying because you think it'll help you stand out from the other submissions. Because then it's going to look desperate rather than intentional. You can absolutely use different tenses. But if there's no in-story reason, like Sandra Bullock is falling in love with Keanu Reeves because of a magic mailbox at a house, and there's no established in-world reason for one tense to be in the past and one to be in the present or vice versa. If you don't have that construction, the story is just going to read weird. And no, because I can see some of you thinking this, no, this isn't one of those things where you can just sort of like zing the reader at the end. And that's why they've been dead for 10 years. Like you don't get to hand wave your reason at the last 5 seconds. You've got to establish it early throughout the story for whatever reason. Now, I'm highlighting A-B romance because that's what the question is from. But anytime you've got dual protagonists or deutragonists, if you really want to use the old-fashioned term, you can always alternate tense between your point of view, but you need an in-story, in-world reason to do so. So if you have characters in the present day looking back at a character from the past, it would make sense to shift tense. Or if you have a deceased character speaking from the afterlife, you've got a qualified reason to shift tense. But you're always free to do it. There just better be a reason. That's the point of the question. And now, I think since I changed the format and I brought in the backgrounds and the overlays and I switched all the software and I made all the buttons and stuff, I haven't had gentle advice where there was like a direct challenge to me. And by the way, if you ever ask a gentle advice question, you are free to add challenge to it. Like, do this without swearing. Or can you do this, in a constantly calm, gentle voice? Whatever hoop you'd like to see me struggle through, by all means, I'll give it a try. And tonight I face quite a challenge. So maybe this will get us to the 2-hour mark. Gentle advice. Question 12. Without swearing. Immediately, everybody who knows me knows exactly how difficult that's going to be. Without swearing, tell me what changed your views on traditional and self-publishing. Okay. Without swearing. Nuts. Okay, here we go. Let's do it. I want to highlight 3 things because it wasn't just like a one-day decision. There were 3 very clear events. Not so much in sequence, although they did happen in a particular order, but it wasn't the fact that they happened in order that was the problem. It's the fact that these 3 things happened to begin with. 2 of them have to do with individual clients. 1 of them has to do with a business project I was associated with. We're going to start with one of the clients. So for a very, very long time, like years and years and years and years and years, maybe 6, 7 years ago. Let's see, I've been sober 7 years. So figure 8 years back. 8 years and earlier, I had this pretty intense vocal dislike for self-publishing. I'm not really embarrassed about it. It was a little simplistic. It was a little uninformed and underinformed, but I'm also too old to run away and pretend I didn't say or think the things I said or the things I thought. And it was like this: self-publishing's nice, but it's sort of like the little brother to traditional publishing. Self-publishing is where the authors who can't make it work end up. It's where you dump your fan fiction. It's where you take your stories that aren't marketable otherwise. It's where you take the things you filed the serial numbers poorly off of and call it a day. It's sloppy. It's weak. It's amateurish. It's the indie circuit before you go mainstream. That was my view for, like 20 years. From about the time I was 19... probably 19 to about 30, I guess. And during that time, I worked mostly in and out of each side of publishing, a little traditional, a little self, although the self-publishing at the time had been primarily focused on just getting people to write better. The publishing side wasn't really a thing. There wasn't a big, giant river mega corporation that was blooming at the time. So it was mostly about, hey, let's just teach you how to write better. And I was working with this woman. She has since died. She's been dead 10 years. This is back in the day when you could visit people in person. So I remember sitting in her living room, and she had just finished her 3-book contract with a traditional publisher. It's a company you might have heard of. It's a small flightless bird. I'm sure you know exactly the people I'm thinking about. And she just finished her 3-book deal with them, and they were dropping her because she didn't want to go forward with them in that way, and they had reached an impasse over a number of dumb things. But she had wrapped up her term there, and it had been a couple months since I had spoken to her, and so she had, in the interim, sort of self-published this other book, sort of not a compendium, but sort of like a supplemental thing to her traditionally published series. The name was different, the cover was different, but the convention was sort of the same. And if you took a quick enough look at the 2 things, they looked pretty similar. You could see they'd go together. And she was kind of marketing it on the sly. It was pretty clever. And I remember sitting in her living room, and she laid out these 2 books, the supplement she just published and a copy of her most recent print run in her traditional book. And we were sitting there talking about like what she was going to do next and what was going on and this, that, and the other. And she asked me to take a look at both of these books and figure out which one was self-published. The covers were similar. The coloration was pretty much all right. The font was pretty much there. It had a different pen name, but that doesn't mean anything. So I did all that I would do to examine a book and determine whether or not it was self-published or traditionally published. And mostly that has to do with looking at the paper stock, looking at the binding, looking at the cover, the way the ink is impressed, the coloring, the matte, the glossiness, all these cosmetic factors, the weight of it, whether or not when you shake the book the pages, fall out or not, how the spine creases, all these not very technical, somewhat technical things. And so I took like 10 minutes to do this. I weighed, I wanted to show off because I was younger and stupid then. So of course I'm trying to impress this person who I, didn't need impressing. And I immediately go, oh, it's the one on the left. And I was dead wrong. I picked the traditionally published book. And that was the first sort of moment where my view on self-publishing changed. Because all of a sudden, the quality of this book, the quality of this physical object, seemed on par, if not better than, this other physical object I had come to have an expectation of quality about. And I filed that away in my head and went on about my day. Years go by. Second thing. I am working now with individual authors. And they are writing pretty good, pretty well. They're writing consistently. They're producing books. They're producing manuscript upon manuscript, draft after draft. Things are going peachy. But they're getting rejected. And they're getting rejected with these really sort of abstract, kind of frustrating bullshit answers like, oh, this isn't the right time for this sort of book. Now, these books I'm going to mention were stories of like, women's fiction and overcoming trauma, or middle grade science fiction, or young adult mystery, or new adult romance, or just straight up cozy mystery and legal thriller. Publishing icons and publishing mainstays where there's always, like Jell-O, there's always room for more. There's never a bad time for the down the middle, play it safe options in publishing, because there always need to be books. So I didn't like that response because I knew how hard these people worked. These were not amateurish, lazy, half-assed projects that just sort of were slapped together so that someone would get, a +1 on the internet or a pat on the head with like, did I swear? Oh, I said bullshit. God damn it. Can we, nuts. It totally spaced on me, man. Anyway, I'm going to continue telling the story with a minimum of swearing. How's that? That really bugs me. Damn, I was doing so well, too. Anyway, they were really trying to make these things. They were really trying to push this stuff forward, but the reasoning was absolute nonsense. Because why would you say no to a legal thriller? Why, it's the summer. Legal thrillers do well in summer. Why would you turn it down? It's not exactly like too similar to others. This stood out, and it was a first-time author. You can capitalize on that. That's good stuff. And that stuck in me because I knew how hard they worked, and I knew they weren't taking the shortcut, and I knew they weren't looking for praise. That's the second thing. Third thing. Years have gone by. I am, at the time of this story, co-founding my fourth press. And because I wanted to create a space where writers could get their work produced and where the mystery of publishing was explained, where it was a somewhat idyllic paradise where it was just bring your stuff in, we'll work on it, and then you can actually have like a, oh my God, thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate that tip. That is honestly my first tip. I've never been tipped before. It's pretty great. Thank you. I don't know why the icon didn't icon. I'll deal with that later. But I do appreciate that tip. Wow. Thanks, man. That's awesome. So anyway, thanks, man. Makes me happy. So, third thing. I'm creating this press. And I'm finding out more and more that it's not fun. Like, it's just not fun. The submissions are all over the place. Some are great, some are not great. The process is finally the way I want it, but there's still a lot of it because there's only like 4 or 5 of us doing this stuff. And it seems more and more like the decisions are getting made in terms of how much money we put in and how many sales we're expected to get. And at the time, I don't have any money. Oh, Rob, that means a great deal to me. Thank you. I of course, always appreciate you. It's nice to see you. Thank you. Thanks, man. That's awesome. Love that. Oh, wow. I needed that. Thank you for that much needed boost. Appreciate it. So I'm working for this company, and it's not fun. I'm not having fun at this job that I love. It's not fun to do these things. And it seems like every week at every meeting, there's always like, hey, we got to put more money in this thing. And I don't have a lot of money. So we come up with this idea of like, hey, you know what we'll do? Your future profits, we'll just invest them. So instead of you getting a cut down the road, well, that'll just be your share of the pay-in now. So I'd be doing all this work and I'd not be getting anything other than the satisfaction of like, hey, I worked on these books. And I have to say, for like the first week, that was fine because the work I was doing was pretty quick and simple. And I had other projects going at the time and it was all right. But then all of a sudden, when everything finished up and I was kind of waiting for like, hey, when do I get anything other than like, hey, thanks so much for your hard work? I never got it. And I saw in those meetings and I saw in that process and I saw in talking to more people in more publishing spaces like that, just how much the focus was financial first, as opposed to story or, to my way of thinking, to narrative, to making better writers. Because if you make better writers, they'll churn out more than one story, presumably. So if you just teach writers how to write, and you focus on that, and then you give them fairly free range in terms of what to write and when to write it, that seems to me like a pretty ideal strategy, because you need books, they need to write, everybody wins. But it, of course, didn't shake out that way, and that ultimately soured me hard on traditional publishing. And as I saw these hardworking writers just bash their fists against the wall, and get rejection after rejection with no notes, or get partial and full submissions and then blanket rejections like it was nothing, and knowing exactly how frustrating it is to be the person who's talking about a spreadsheet, it changed my view. Does that mean I'm suddenly on board with all the lowest common denominator, low-hanging fruit of self-publishing? No, I still have no patience for any of that. I do think a lot of people use it as an end-around shortcut to the praise of, yeah, I'm published, as opposed to I'm putting in the work to becoming better as an artist. I wish more people would focus on art and production as opposed to the end result, get you that title. But all the same, I think by and large, when given the correct kind of encouragement and the correct approach to how you explain things, I think any writer can rise up out of the take the easy way out path. It might not be pleasant or quick, but I think you can elevate anybody by giving them the support and education that they need. And that's why I changed my views. And those are the things that changed my views. And to be fair, as I have gotten older and poorer and angrier and more tired, I don't see me going back, because I think it's an old institution. I think if 6 months of lockdown are able to reveal how precarious the whole system's arranged, I think it's a system definitely worth not only challenging but toppling. But that's possibly a question for another day. That's my gentle, minimal swearing I feel really bad about it. I tried. I swear I really had the intent. I just messed it up. Nuts. But it's okay. We got through. It was a good answer. I'm pleased with it. All right. One more check for questions. Yes? No? Anybody? Anything? Writer friends always tell me to start a newsletter, but I have no idea what to put in it other than, hey, I'm still writing that book. Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with, hey, I'm still writing that book. But here are some other things you can put in a newsletter. Did you do anything else other than write the book? Do you have views on other things you're doing in your life? Like, hey, I spent, 2 hours checking out this video game. Here's what I think about the video game. I just recently watched this series. Here's what I think about it. Here are 2 of the 5 stupid pictures of dumb things I took on Instagram. Just because the primary thing in your newsletter is, hey, I'm writing this book, does not mean it needs to be the sole feature of that newsletter. I mean, yeah, can you just have a real short newsletter of, newsletter, I'm writing the book, send? Sure, absolutely. I think that's kind of amusing, frankly. I think it would work. But you're not, you don't have to be limited by that. It can be more, and you can reach out past just the, hey, here's this, here's this book. I can tell you, as somebody who's relaunching their newsletter soon, I'm aiming mid-January. I'm in the middle of a class that is teaching me how to do it, because I should really, I can swear now. I can either shit or get off the pot, if anybody knows that phrase, and actually do something with this newsletter that I keep telling everybody I forget to do. And I do forget to do it, but I want to do something with it. Because while I was writing the Substack, which became an enormous responsibility, the Substack was great. I got to write and flex those muscles. The newsletter, I want to take in a broader approach, and I'm including things outside of just like the very specifics. I'm writing this. I'm working on this. Here's a copy. Haven't heard that phrase in a while. Yeah, it's an old phrase, apparently. It's like a grandparent phrase, which is where I heard it all the time. So I'm glad I could bring that back, dust that thing off. I'm still trying to find a way to work 23 skidoo into a conversation, but we'll deal with that later. Anyway, it's your newsletter. It's your space. You can put in anything you want. My newsletter includes not just, hey, here's the thing I'm working on, but also potential ideas, scrapped ideas, micro reviews of stuff I checked out, like short 2-paragraph things. Like, I watched this. It was pretty good. Here are the things that aren't going to be on Patreon this month because no. It's just because I want to use the newsletter for me in such a way as to broadcast a pretty wide net. Because I got a lot of things to say. And I have friends who have very wide net, large, popular newsletters, and they've been needling me, hey, do something with this. So I'm taking up the challenge. You don't have to. You can if you want, but it's your space. Use it literally however you want. You want to include pictures, like 22 pictures of the dog? Awesome. Go for it. It's okay. There really isn't a wrong way to do this, short of like being a jerk, which you're not, so I wouldn't worry about it. But even if your newsletter was just like one MS Paint kind of, I'm still writing picture sent out every Friday, it'd be great. I'd love it. I'd insist, like I'd print the first edition and put it on the wall because it would just make me laugh. It's your space. Use it however you want. Great question. Love this. That really did make me happy. Thank you for your question. Others? Good. I'm glad. I hope you do. Let me know how it goes. Good, good. Other questions? Else we will go to the outro. All right. I think it's outro time. Press the outro button, John. I should teach one of the cats how to do this. Wait. One note before we outro. Wait, hold up. One note before we outro. I've since switched from one software to the other. YouTube gets it the next day. I'm going to try. I'm looking at my clock now. In theory, if I were to start uploading it now, like I'd process the audio and I'd get all the stuff out, it would be up anywhere from like 7 minutes from now to like 6 hours from now. I'm telling you right now, I'm just going to upload it on Thursday morning when I get out of bed so that I don't have to race around tonight. So it will be up tomorrow on YouTube. So you will be a day behind. Cool? Cool. And like I said, I don't like sitting here like hoping this thing doesn't crash or whatever because it's finicky because it's YouTube. All right. We're outroing. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your support, your subs, your tips, your follows. You guys really do save my life every week. Thank you for your extra spicy questions. Thanks for letting me talk about beta readers and dead genres and explaining newsletters and talking about stuff. I still am really sorry I said bullshit. I tried. I really tried. We'll try again next week, I promise. The next time I will be right here in your ears. Will be Monday the 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about multiple points of view, multiple arcs, multiple B-plots, like the guts of storytelling, real kind of crunchy technical stuff. I'm looking forward to it. The next time we're here for a writer's chat, I'm sorry, I got the date wrong. That's the 6th. That's December the 6th, Monday. The next time I'm here for a writer's chat is December the 8th. And I look forward to seeing you and having your questions here one more time. Man, have a great night. All power to all people. Take care of yourselves. Be safe, be smart. Look after the ones you love. Tell people you love them when you love them. Support artists, support yourselves. Take a deep breath. Go to your happy place. Drink some water. Take your meds. Get some rest. You are absolutely worth it. I love you all. You're amazing. And I will talk to you very, very soon. See ya!